Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Leslie, and if you like videos about budgeting and frugality, you are in the right place. So today we are talking about mistakes that I have made that I don't want you to make. So let's talk about things that I would have done differently, especially starting in my 20s or even sooner. Things that are definitely time sensitive and stuff that you may want to consider. And it's worth noting that it is never too late to start doing some of these things. So if you are a bit older or you started getting your budgeting and your finances together later in life, this can still apply to you. So make sure you are doing these things. So the very first thing that I would have done differently is to get serious about my job/income. So it actually took me 6 years to get through college. I did transfer and there were some issues that popped up. So it took me a little longer than normal to get started in my actual adult life. So I did always use that excuse of, oh, I'm in school, I can only work so much, which was true. I mean, I really only had so many hours in the day. But even once I was out of school, it still took me a while to get on track with having a normal adult job. It wasn't until my 30s that I actually started working full time. So after I finished school, I had trouble getting a job in my field and I just kept working retail. I did work at a call center for a short time. That one actually did pay pretty well and I got decent hours, but I never worked full time. And to be honest, I was actually a little scared to have a full-time job. At the time, I was having some health issues. I'm one of those people who I just need a lot of sleep. Sometimes it is hard to get through the day without a nap, even now. So I was just so scared about working a full-time job that I never even applied to one. And ironically, the weird thing is, before I moved, so I was living in Ohio and now I'm living in New Jersey, and before I moved, I wanted to make sure I paid off all of my debt so that I could be a stay-at-home mom when I got here with my husband. So I did really put a lot of effort into paying off all of my debt. I had about $2,000 in credit card debt I needed to pay off. So I actually got a second part-time job instead of getting one full-time job. And part of the reason is because I liked having a little variety. I didn't want to be stuck in one spot for like 8 hours a day. I liked being able to move around a bit. And at the time, I was living by myself. I didn't have a family. So it was a lot easier to spend my time at work and really like grinding to pay off that money. Now, looking back, I probably should have gotten a full-time job just so I could have the benefits. It was a short-term thing that I was doing because I was about to move, so that was another reason for it. So the point is I definitely should have gotten a full-time job sooner, especially because of the benefits, things like your 401k, your insurance, and also just a better paycheck, the chance for overtime. There are so many different reasons that you should just go ahead and get a full-time job. There are exceptions to this. Maybe you have enough side hustles that you can get by with just a part-time job, but that's why I said get serious about your job/income, because what you want to do is really maximize the amount of income you can bring in. So I spent so much time trying to cut my expenses, but I was already living a pretty frugal life. So the problem was that I could only cut expenses so much, and that's really a harsh truth that I had to learn. You can only cut so much before you need to bring in more income. I made this one the very first point because this is the one thing you need to do in order to do some of these other steps. So number 2 is going to be start investing early, even if it is just a little bit, because that compound interest really adds up over time. So when I say investing, this is things like retirement. It might be actual investing in like ETFs. I don't usually recommend individual stocks because those can be so all over the place. But if you invest in something like SPY, which is an ETF, it takes the top 500 companies and you invest a little bit into each one. So if for some reason they all go under, you're going to have much bigger problems than your money in the stock market because our entire economy just collapsed basically. So anything like that that takes from a bunch of different stocks rather than one individual one is what you're going to look for. It's true that it can skyrocket and you can make a ton of money, but more likely it could go down and then you will lose money. So it's just very risky to do it that way unless you're very familiar with the stock you're investing in. So what is compound interest? I mentioned that and you may not know what it is. So let's look at a graph that can visually show you the effect of compound interest. So this graph here, you can see two lines. One of them is if you start investing in your 20s, and the other one is if you start investing in your 30s. So this chart takes into account you are investing $100 a month with a 7% annual return. So 7%, that's going to be more than what you would get in the savings account. So this is more for investing / retirement. But either way, it gives you a nice visual to see the difference. So basically, once you get to around 38 years old from this chart, you have doubled your money just thanks to compound interest. So it makes such a huge difference. And there's one more graph I wanted to show you just because it's one thing to hear it, it's another thing to see it on one of these charts. So this next one shows you the difference between your contributions, so what you are investing versus the interest that you're getting. So that purple part is your contributions, and then that yellow part is your interest. So how is all of this possible that interest just accrues that fast and really takes off? So what happens is you deposit $100 into an account, either investing or saving. Like I said, savings has a smaller interest rate, but it works either way. So you invest $100, you earn interest on that $100. So then let's say you earn 10% just for easy math. So the next time you earn interest, you are earning interest on $110, and then it goes up from there. So you start earning interest on your interest. So in the beginning, it does go pretty slow. Like I mentioned, if you have $100, 10% interest after a year, you would only have $110. So $10 interest for a whole year isn't much. But if you keep depositing that 100 every month, and then it gets interest from every deposit, it really starts to add up. So with the compound interest, I really, really wish I had started saving for retirement much sooner than I did, because I didn't start saving until a couple years ago. So about my mid-30s, I started saving for retirement, and that's pretty late. Not super, super late because I still have a good like 30 years, but the compound interest that I lost from waiting all of that time to finally invest, that's like 15 years that I could have been investing into my retirement. And by the time I retire, that could have been a lot more money. So this is why it is so important to get started with this early, even if it's just a small amount, because even if you only have $20 a month, that will start to add up just from that interest. And if you have something like a company match with your retirement, that is just extra free money that's going into your account as well. So this is just a really, really crucial point. And this also leads into the third point, which is to always have an emergency fund and put the emergency fund into a high yield savings account. So a high yield savings account is one that has a higher percentage of interest, because some savings account, it's like way less than 1%. It's like maybe 0.1%. I mean, it's super, super low. So you really need to watch and find one that has a decent amount. So I use Ally. There is a link in the description for Ally where you get a little bonus if you sign up. But Ally, they used to be like I think the top high yield savings account. Now they're still pretty good. I think there are some better ones, but when I looked at some of the better ones, they were companies I'd never even heard of. So I wanted to stick with one that I know and I'm familiar with. And I also just love Ally Bank. I do my investing through them as well. So it's really nice to just have everything in one spot. I think they're at like 3.5% interest, something like that. But anyway, whatever it is, just make sure you're getting a decent amount of interest on your savings. So not only do you have your savings for an emergency there, it's also building more money as it sits there. So there have definitely been times in my life where I put emergency money on my credit card, which, I mean, at least I had that for an emergency, but then it starts developing interest, and the interest rate on a credit card is pretty high. So you really don't want to do that unless it's an absolute last resort and you want to pay it off as fast as you can. So this is where having an emergency fund really, really helps you out. So the next mistake that I made, and I think this is one that's fairly common, especially when you're younger, is that I would just kind of follow what other people were doing, because I figured if there was like a general consensus around certain things, that was the way to do it. And that, it sounds kind of dumb now, I guess, but I was young, I didn't know. That is just, it's not the right way to do it. So the people around you may be buying a house, they might be buying a new car, they might be leasing a car, they might be doing all these things that may not be best for you. Like, I know the people that are around me now, they all tend to be leasing a car, and I am very, very against leasing cars. I think it is such a bad idea. I might even make a video on it at some point because I am just so anti-leasing cars. But luckily, I think it was my dad who told me not to do that, but someone told me not to do that at some point in my life, and it just stuck with me, and I'm so glad it did, because that's just so much money that you're having to pay every month, and it is much better to just own a slightly older car outright. So that was one example that really could have come back to bite me. The same thing with buying a brand new car. That is also, I don't want to say always a bad idea, but it definitely would have been for me. So I'm really glad I didn't do that either. And then even outside of that, things like not just spending money, but also saving money. You may not want to save your money in the exact same way as everyone else. So when it comes to things like retirement versus savings or investing, you may want to do something a little different than other people. Like I mentioned, with investing in stocks, there are a lot of people who do invest in individual stocks, and some of them do make money. But I know for me and for many people, that is not the way to go about it if you want to actually make long-term money. So even between my husband and I, we tend to save money a little differently. I definitely prefer to save in my retirement account and have my emergency fund in savings. I don't do too much actual investing outside of that, at least at the moment. Down the road, if I have more money, I might get into that. But for now, I think it's best to put most of it into my 401k, my 401k Roth account, and also emergency savings. But my husband likes to do a little bit of his own investing. So he will do the company match for his 401k and then put the rest into investments. He actually doesn't even do personal savings at all. Of course, since we are married, we're a family, my personal savings would cover our family for an emergency. So it does really work out between the two of us. But the point is, people just prefer different things when it comes to saving and spending money. And another thing to note is that you need to be really careful, especially with things you see online. So there are a lot of people who will tell you to do things one way or another without knowing you and your situation. So just take financial advice, including mine, with a grain of salt. Everyone's situation is different, so people need to do different things. So just because one person is doing it or a whole lot of people are doing it, it doesn't necessarily mean it's right for you, and you should definitely never feel pressured to do things a certain way. So another big mistake, number 5, is lifestyle creep. So lifestyle creep is one that really got me, especially in my 20s, because when you are younger, you're still kind of figuring out what's normal for people. Like I mentioned in the last one, you may see other people doing certain things and you just kind of think that's the normal way to do it. But one of the things that I thought was normal is that as you make more money, you spend more money. It just made sense in my head. I have more to spend now, so I'm going to spend more. So if you get a raise, you get a different job, a better paying job, you just inflate your lifestyle based on what your pay is. But that is not at all how you should do it. And it's actually a really good way to live paycheck to paycheck forever if you keep increasing your expenses as you get more money. So one example is when I was younger and I would move around a lot and I changed around a lot of apartments over the years, I would always get a better apartment than the last one I had until I eventually just couldn't afford it anymore, and then I just dropped way back down and got an apartment I could afford. But looking back when I was like 19, 20, I did not need such big apartments. I had a few, I was living with my boyfriend at the time, so I guess that did kind of affect things a bit. Honestly, we shouldn't have even been living together. Like that whole time in my life I probably just shouldn't have done a lot of things. But yeah, I didn't need such big apartments. I didn't need such nice apartments. The area I was living in was pretty safe, so it's not like safety was a huge concern when you're looking at different apartments. Anywhere would have been fine, but I was so stuck on having more room and more amenities and just a nicer place. And I think the reason I felt like I needed such big apartments is because I had so much stuff. I don't know, I really should have been decluttering more, but I don't know, I felt like once you got an apartment, you needed to fill it, you know? Like once I got out on my own, I had this like drive to fill the space around me. And the thing that's really tough when you're moving between apartments is you never know what your next apartment is going to be. So if you buy furniture for one apartment, it is not a guarantee that it's even going to fit in your next apartment. So you really shouldn't go crazy buying too much and filling the space you're in. Because there was one time where I had a really big apartment, and there's no way I was gonna get an apartment bigger than that. It was like stupid big. I basically had a completely empty room because I didn't have enough stuff to fill that big apartment. So when I moved out of there, of course it was a downgrade, and then I could hardly fit anything into other apartments that were like a more reasonable size. And I wasn't into decluttering at all. It was quite the opposite. The house I grew up in, like, we tended to accumulate a lot of stuff. Not like hoarder level. I almost think it was just a normal kind of family where you tend to get more stuff without realizing it, and eventually you just have a ton of stuff in your house. But I remember a lot of times we wouldn't have empty surfaces. Like, there would always just be stuff everywhere. So I think that kind of stuck with me and became my normal. So then when I got my own place, it was normal to just have a ton of stuff. I really wish I had gotten into minimalism or just decluttering in general much sooner, because I should have gotten rid of so much of the stuff I had, but I really just didn't know how. So I guess I know that was kind of off topic for budgeting, because that was more of a like decluttering, like keeping tabs on all your stuff sort of thought, but they kind of go hand in hand. I mean, the lifestyle creep tends to involve buying things and then you buy too much and you're stuck, and that's just one thing to really watch out for, is lifestyle creep. And you don't always have to be moving up in the world. It is totally fine to have a small apartment, get rid of your stuff. I mean, you also just never know your situation. It's possible that you have a really good paying job now, but then something happens and you end up working a very low paying job. You want to be able to keep a roof over your head. So it's always important to live below your means, and that is a lesson that I really wish I had learned much sooner. Luckily for me, there was no like crazy fallout from not following that rule, but I mean, things could have gotten bad. You never know what's going to happen. So I just got lucky. Hey everyone, I was just editing the video and I wanted to jump in and let you know that I do have a video about mistakes I made in my first apartment and what I would have done differently. So if that sounds interesting to you, I will put it in the description below so you can watch that video next. So number 6 is another one that just hit me really hard. Number 6 is to not fall into doom spending. So this is something I was doing before that phrase was even a thing, but I remember I went through a bit of a quarter life crisis not too long after I graduated college. So I had a little bit of student loans from undergrad, not too bad. But the thing that really got me was after I went to grad school and I racked up a lot more loans. And then at the time, I didn't even finish grad school. I went for like a year and a half, and I really didn't have that much left to do, but my life was just so crazy at the time, and I basically dropped out of grad school. I did end up finishing eventually, like several years later. It was like 7 years later that I finished. At the time, I had racked up a lot of debt. I didn't have a degree. I didn't know what kind of job I wanted. I was stuck in retail. Things were just bleak and confusing, and I was just going through a whole crisis, and I said, I'm going to buy what I want. I'm going to do what I want. I will never pay off this debt, so it doesn't matter. I'm not going to pay all my loans at all. Luckily, I didn't go too crazy, but I did rack up some credit card debt. I think I ended up with like $2,000 in credit card debt that I had a hard time paying off, because I would pay off a little bit. Because I mean, it didn't start at $2,000. I didn't just buy like big items, but it was a lot of small purchases that I had previously avoided because I didn't have the money. And I started just saying, whatever, I'll buy it. I mean, it's such a small thing. I'm never going to pay off my debt. I might as well buy it. I would buy things to make myself feel better. So all these little purchases started to add up. And I remember I had like $1,000 on my credit card, and that was when I was really struggling to pay my credit card because I was making such small payments each month, and then the interest that would apply would just wipe out whatever I had paid. I mean, the interest was getting to be more than what I was paying each month. So it was really hard to keep up with that card. And that's when I should have stopped and really gotten, you know, everything together. But no, I kept going. So I can't remember the exact amounts because like I said, it was a little bit here and there, but it would get to between like 1,000 to 1,500. And I think the highest amount I got to was like 2,000. Oh, you know what? Actually, it was a mix between my credit card and PayPal credit. So I think I had like maybe 1,500 on my credit card and like 2,000 in PayPal credit. So I needed to pay off all of that. I think PayPal credit, I still had time to pay off without interest, but my credit card was really starting to add up. So yeah, it was a bit of a mess. And that's when I got that second job before I moved out here to pay off all of that debt. And I did. So I had to get a whole second job to pay off that debt. So I was working 50 hours, 55, sometimes 60 hours a week just to pay off that debt. So all that work I was doing, it wasn't even doing anything other than paying down the debt I had accumulated over those years. So whenever you're feeling like that, just remember your situation is not going to be the same forever. You are not going to be the same person forever. And your future self will likely thank you for not doom spending. I mean, I am so mad at myself for some of the things I bought, and because it was all stuff that I didn't even need most of the time, or I would buy a little outside of my means. Like I know the PayPal credit 2,000 was for a laptop. I did not need a $2,000 laptop. I would have been fine with way less than that. So it was just some dumb decisions that I had made. And then now I am working on paying off my student loans. I started working on that probably about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago. I guess that was really when I started to get my budgeting and finances in order, was a couple years ago. But yeah, so I'm no longer the person who thinks I will never pay off my debt. In fact, I am really pushing to pay it off. I actually have a whole 5-year plan to get everything paid off. So there's just no point in falling into doom spending because you never know what the future is going to look like. You may end up with a much better job. You may end up with the means to pay it back. I mean, just writing it off as something you will never pay back is just the wrong idea when it comes to debt. And if you are doom spending to cope with things, like I know me, I was going through a bit of a crisis and had a lot going on. It's really important to find other means to kind of get over that don't involve spending. So replace spending with something else that's a little more healthy, maybe a new hobby, or I don't know, go to therapy, like start journaling, something. Just do anything to keep yourself from falling back into spending. It can definitely be hard sometimes because I think one of the things with doom spending is that you see how much debt you have and you don't want to just stop spending at all and put it all into paying off your debt, because then your life kind of sucks. I mean, entertaining things usually cost money. So it's really hard to just not spend anything outside of paying on your debt. So I think sometimes restricting yourself too much can start to lead into that doom spending mindset. Because I know when I first finished my undergrad, I had one loan that was only, I think, $700 or $800, but I was only working part-time at the time. So to pay that amount off, it took a lot of work to pay that. And so putting all of my extra money towards that loan, and I had like nothing else, it really sucked, to put it bluntly. So I think that's one thing that also affected my mentality. So I guess that's where budgeting and keeping track of your money really comes in handy, because you can see when you're able to spend a little extra money. You don't have to put 100% of your extra money into your debt payment. It's okay to take a little bit to buy yourself something nice, go get your hair done or your nails. I mean, whatever you want to do, just have a little bit of that guilt-free spending money that you can go and treat yourself a little bit. Obviously don't go overboard, but it just really helps your mentality when you're working on paying on debt. And the final one, number 7, is a kind of a mentality I had that I don't have anymore, but that is people can learn to manage money. I thought learning how to manage money was one of those things you were kind of born with. Like some people just have that money managing brain, but that is not true at all. Money management is something that you can definitely learn. It is a skill. And if you are watching videos like this one, then that means that you already know that because you're trying to build that skill as well. So always keep that in mind. that even if you make mistakes, even if you're not great with money right now, you can definitely learn. And you definitely don't have to be perfect. I mean, I'm talking about mistakes I've made here, and I'm someone who now is very conscious about my spending. I'm someone who budgets every single month. I do the whole Budget With Me series so that you can see some of my numbers and see some of the mistakes I make, because I do make mistakes. Yeah, it's definitely a journey that you have to go through to get better with money. But the good news is you can get there. You can always be better than you are now. I believe in you. You can do it. So that is the list. I guess if there was one takeaway, like one big thing I would challenge you on, is make sure that you are saving something or investing something. Set up an automatic transfer for like even $5 a week into a savings or investing account, or set up a retirement account where you work. Even if you are 18 years old, set up that retirement account, because I promise you, you will not regret it. Quite the opposite. If you get to your mid 30s or 40s, especially if you're older than that, you're going to regret not starting that account sooner. Like, I see how much money I've been able to put into retirement over the past 2 years, and it just blows my mind with how much I could have by now if I had just started in my 20s. So let me know if you have made any money mistakes yourself, or if you have any advice, things that you've learned. I would love to hear from you in the comments. So just like, subscribe, do all the YouTube things, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.